Are we expecting Rob? Do we know? Okay, Rob's gonna be gone. Okay. Okay, we're gonna call the meeting of Planning and Zoning Commission to order. If we could do the roll call, please.
Megan,
Here.
Brian, Brooks,
Here.
Rob, Alyssa, Michael, Barb.
Here. Okay, we've got a quorum, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome to you out in the audience. We'll call for the approval of the agenda, please.
Just a reminder for recording purposes, when you make a motion, if you could say your last name, that would be, or first name, however you want to acknowledge yourself, that'd be appreciated.
Okay. Yep, approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda, Mrs. Brooks.
Brian, I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar. Would we have a motion for that, please?
Totes move to move to approve the
Consent calendar.
consent calendar. Thank you.
Brian, I'll second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, then we've got the approval of the minutes. How did they look, Alyssa? They look okay? We have a second.
Bassett, I'll second.
Okay. She is our proofreader, so we have to see what I always rely on what you have to say, Alyssa. Okay, motion and second to approve the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. So this is a time for public comments. So if you're on the agenda already, you can come up when it's your time on the agenda. But if you're here and would like to address the commission on anything else, you're welcome to do that. Is there anyone here that is so inclined today? Okay. Okay, we'll move on to the rezone under new business. Go ahead, Patrick.
So this is an item that most of you have seen before. This came 6 months plus ago for a plan development requesting the whole parcel be put into a plan development. This application is just requesting the western 4 lots. Currently it is 1 lot. In order to replat it separately, lots when created need to meet the zoning requirements. As it sits currently, if you subdivided it, it would not because of setbacks. So a plan development is proposed that would essentially make it legally compliant so it could be subdivided. So that is the proposal. And the setbacks are laid out in such a way that it's designed to keep what's there as is, more or less. And it's just the lots 1, 2, 3, and 4. Lot 5 is itself just not part of this PD. It's a separate lot.
Okay, go ahead, just introduce yourself and give us your address, please.
Thank you. Eric Kirkfleet, one of the members of Douglas Street Investments. Address is 7317 East Twin Pines Court in Sioux Falls. As Patrick mentioned, we were here back in October of 2023 seeking a rezone of both the west and the east lots. And at that point in time, there were some concerns from the Planning Commission with regard to setbacks and how close the east lot was to Augusta Street. It's only 12.9 feet from Augusta Street instead of the 20 or 25 feet that's required. And so it was non-conforming as an R2 and would continue to be non-conforming as a PD. So there was a recommendation of denial at that point in time, and the city adopted that recommendation. However, when we met in October of 2023, there were not nearly as many concerns with regard to the west lot and those setbacks. They do meet as there currently are in the R2 zoning, they currently meet the setback requirements of 25 feet from Augusta Street and 20 feet from Chestnut Boulevard. And then they also meet the side yard requirements. And so it's a conforming use that meets the R2 requirements currently. And so because that west lot wasn't much of a concern the last time around. We've revised our application to just include a subdivision of the west lot. But the city was not able to administratively approve of that because if we divide the west lot into 4 lots, it changes it from one corner lot to one corner lot and 3 additional lots, lots 1, 2, and 3. And so when it's subdivided, what ends up happening is lots 1, 2, and 3 are either 24.4 or 24.5 feet from Chestnut Boulevard. So it's slightly 6 inches or so less than the 25-foot requirement off of Chestnut Boulevard. So that's why we couldn't just administratively have our application granted. So that's why we're here asking for a very minor reduction in those setback requirements so that it can be approved as a PD.
Actually, okay, just to comment, technically, if the PD route actually doesn't technically ask for reduction, it actually allows them to have to set different requirements, or am I totally wrong?
Nope. Correct. What is R2 would be irrelevant for the PD. A PD is essentially a create your own zoning district. So you would set the rules. You could make it them 24.4, you could make it 15. You'd be writing the zoning district for these 4 lots. And the proposal is where they currently are as a means of making them conforming, but not allowing them to be essentially closer to either the boulevard or the street.
And, okay, so why are we looking at a plan development instead of, say, a variance request? I mean, yeah,
Yep, you would be looking at the hardship question. So with a variance request, it already exists, is the deal. They're not looking to add something, so it exists, they're making reasonable and feasible use of it. Now, would it be able to have a variance?
and, okay.
And the variance would apply to a very specific thing, not the lot itself.
Yeah. And so it's R2 now, and you want plan development because you want to make the one lot into 4 lots.
That's correct, yes.
And
We'd
you
like
won't-
to divide that one fourplex on the west lot into 4 separate units that could be sold off individually as opposed to just 4 rental units.
They're rented now, but you want to be able to sell them.
Yeah,
And that's why you
exactly.
want to separate it into 4 lots instead of just one. lot.
Yep, exactly. Yep,
Okay, I
I
get
forgot
it.
to mention that, thank you.
I get it. Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Is that what we did with those, excuse me, Brent, with those brick ones over by the little library or the museum? That's what we did
They were
there.
rental, they went to ownership.
Got a couple questions here. So it appears that you are eliminating a sanitary sewer easement.
Don't believe so.
On the top there, it says existing 20-foot wide sanitary sewer easement to be vacated with this plat. So just clarifying that, correct?
I'm sorry, where do you see that?
Right
Page
there on the very top of the
13 of the
page.
packet. I'll zoom in for you.
I'm trying to remember what the language is of that. I feel like we changed it into a mutual access and
Well,
utility
that's what I'm getting
easement.
at here.
I think
So,
we just didn't want to overlap it. We're just cleaning it up at the same time, if I
because
remember correctly.
it says 20-foot wide,
Right.
but
And
there's 2 dimensions, a 15 and a 5. So I'm trying to understand what the 15 and 5 are representing there.
Okay, I think what, Aaron Norman was our engineer on this, and I think what he did with Tammy's approval was locating the sewer easement and the water easement centered on the main line. So I think that's what's going on there.
So
It's centered in the middle of the mutual access easement.
So where is the mutual access easement? I do not see that on here.
That is,
Because all 5 parcels are gonna require mutual access easement.
Right, and this isn't the final plat, it's just the exhibit that they
Well,
put together.
it's got
with the
some
plat
issues
on it.
whether we approve this or not though. And so if you follow my reasoning here, you indicate that 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the only ones that are impacted by this, but actually by changing this, parcel 5 now changes.
yeah,
Because it will have a mutual access easement on the east side, that creates some additional requirements. That parcel's currently out of conformance, because it has no rear yard. It has 2 side yards. So by putting a mutual access easement on the west side, that forces us to have a rear yard on the east side. And
And
so that's, by doing this, this puts lot 5 out of conformance.
I think what this drawing's missing is what the previous drawing back in October had. It shows the mutual access easement on both the west lot and the east lot. So I think this drawing's just in error in that it doesn't have the east half of the mutual access easement located on lot 5, but that is the intention, for there to be a mutual access easement to lot
Right.
5.
I don't disagree with that. What I'm saying is, by doing this, this impacts lot 5. It makes a lot that's currently out of conformance even more out of conformance.
I see what you're saying.
So I got some problems by allowing that to happen. Also, we talk about setbacks, but without seeing where the actual dimensions are for the mutual access, our ordinance does require some setbacks off of the mutual access easement. So if this was an R2, which the east side will still be an R2, lot 5, exception number 4, if the lot contains or abuts a private street mutual access easement, the front yard setback shall be 15 feet measured from the edge of the sidewalk easement that is closest to the structure. So with the mutual access easement, I would expect to also see a sidewalk easement and then the 15 feet. I don't know if you're gonna get the 15 feet, the sidewalk, the mutual access, 15 feet on the other side, and the sidewalk on the other side.
Yeah, and there's not really a sidewalk there. It's just all cement in the mutual access easement. So I think that's why we were seeking.
I understand that, but I wanna see a sidewalk,
Sure.
because even though this is a private road, the people on lots 1, 2, and 3 are gonna want a sidewalk access out to, what is that, Augusta? I'm on the wrong page here. Out to Augusta.
Sure. Understood.
So I'm not sure how you're gonna get everything to fit and still stay within the ordinance. I don't know if I wanna create a plan development. If I would personally be in favor of creating a plan development, that still doesn't meet the intent of our ordinance.
So some additional comments there on page 11 of the packet. So this image does not do a great job of it, but if I remember correctly, the mutual access easement runs along what would be the drive-through. So the property line is essentially the middle. If there's the 3-star exception just above special area regulations, it's written in a way to make the mutual access easement setback basically measured from the property line, accounting for not being the sidewalk. So that's what this attempts to do, whether that's the right approach or not. So that's where the number comes from with the 32.5 and 32.6 and the 32.3. It comes from the measurement of what would be the property line or the center of the mutual access easement, but this is not a great image that shows that.
But I believe all the other plan developments do have sidewalks in them.
we do have a process that they could go through if they wanted to be exempt from a sidewalk. So we do have a form and it needs council approval.
So regardless of the sidewalk, this is still putting lot 5 even further out of conformance. Correct? With a mutual access easement, this would be considered a double front lot, which would require 2 rear yards. Currently, there's only 2 side yards.
Correct. If you consider the mutual access easement a frontage, I mean, you might make the argument it becomes a corner lot then, because it would have frontage. So it would require a rear yard.
Well, regardless,
somewhere.
there's no rear yard on it.
Correct.
But right now, there's not a rear yard either.
I don't disagree with that, but with this layout, the people in that northwest corner, the people in the middle on the east side, they have probably 8 square feet of lawn. And with this being one large parcel, their kids could go play across the street in what's becoming Lot 1. That's part of a multi-family apartment type complex, is that there's additional lawn space that kids, families can have the right to access, and this would prevent that.
Is there, I'm assuming if you sell this lot 1, that yard would just be part of their yard. Is there any thought of keeping that in like an HOA between the 5 lots to allow some green space?
That's something we'd be open to because we're gonna be keeping the east lot and those 4 units, as rentals. So it'd be an option that we would consider if that was a deal breaker, would be keeping that lot 1 as part of the HOA.
Even if you gave lot 1 a typical side yard or backyard, I guess would that need a backyard then on the north side of lot 1 if you have 2 frontages? But anyway, so if you gave a setback and then you had some green space that allowed lot 5 some green space. Because I do agree that middle unit on lot 5 has nowhere to go. I mean, there is a park across the street, but
Yeah, our perfect world was subdividing all 8 lots. That was kind of the intention when we bought it, but we're not in the perfect world anymore. So we're open to whatever suggestions to try to make this work, to sell as many off as we could to make it work. But
So the west lot that's shown here subdivided and the east lot are both drawn in here. So the intent is that all of these are part of the PD, but the
1,
the
2,
east
3, and
lot-
4 are part of the PD. 5 is not.
5 is not, okay. Okay.
So tonight, what we're trying to determine is if this could be rezoned to a PD, correct?
Correct. It's a recommendation from planning and zoning to city council either way. Either way, it would go to city council, whether you feel this PD as written is something you'd recommend or not.
Okay, so we understand that you're trying to make this work. So trying to come up with a compromise.
I think with the location of the park across the street, I certainly understand the lack of green space for that middle unit, but apartment buildings have, you know, zero green space per unit too, and they have either public green space or their own green space or something. I don't know if it's the right thing to tie lot one up into that. If we could certainly put a condition on it with them keeping it for green space. I'm just not sure if long-term, if that's the best way to go, or just having the public park across the street. The rest of it, I mean, we're outside of the setbacks, but they're so close that I'm not sure that the changes make lot 5 really that much different than what it is. And that the reason why we didn't want to let lot 5 go into the PD before is because then you'd have 3 units that you have owners that have a very unique property, and they could be tied up in lots of different things where one owner could kind of handle those, but the lots 1 through 4, I think they're so close to a typical lot that it should have been done differently. It would have saved a lot of.
I guess, I feel like we're creating a PD because this is something we would not allow. And I don't know if that's correct, appropriate.
Do we have any recommendation from staff, or are you neutral, or where are we at from a staff standpoint, and don't all hide under the desk?
Nope. So this one is difficult just because if it was proposed today under an R2 zoning district, it would not be approved. Unfortunately, we have something that does exist. Whether the city should have approved it years ago, I don't know. I don't know exactly what the codes were. I imagine there probably was not ever a front yard setback of 12.9 feet, but we have this. And I get the reluctance to, no one wants to create a PD to whitewash away the problems of the past. So it leaves everyone, the lot owner, us, it leaves everyone in a bind. As far as the recommendation from staff goes, I don't know. I can see where we want to fix it, but I can see also not wanting to start the policy of we make PDs to cover up mistakes. So I don't know if this is a one-off, or we have created PDs before to cover up mistakes, for better or worse. I think there's a couple around town where we have, but yeah, there's not really a good solution from the city front. So we are relying on P&Z and the city council to make a policy decision, basically.
So just from a practical standpoint, if we're not able to make the PD work, what's plan C, plan D? I mean, I understand the financial commitment that you've put into this property already, and I appreciate that. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, probably just keep them as rentals. I mean, it's an okay backup plan. It's not ideal, but it's okay. We're in the multifamily business, and we can continue to own it as 8 units on 2 parcels, and that's okay. But it doesn't maximize the value of the property.
And from a big picture standpoint for Brandon, is it better for us to have those owned individually rather than providing rental units for folks, or do we need rental units for folks? Or do you have an opinion on that?
Yeah, I guess my opinion is I think there's a need for both, but I think this would be in the range of a starter home, the 250 to 350 range, where I think it is a need for the city of Brandon for homes in that range. So that was one of the ideas, was it would add to the housing inventory of available homes for people in that, either the young adult or the retiring senior. It would be a good fit for those demographics.
So what are you able to draw for rent on these units at the moment?
I think it's around 1,200.
So it's not inexpensive.
No, they're nice units. So it's around the 1,200 mark, I think.
So for a young person, they could rent it, but they're not building up any equity.
Right. Yep.
So if this is approved and you sell off lots 1 through 4, then you would be only involved with lot 5 after that. You wouldn't be involved with lot 1 through 4 anymore. Is that correct?
We would continue to manage the HOA for the 4 lots until such time as we turned it over to the actual owners of those 4 lots to manage the HOA. So there'd be a period of time where we'd own it, but probably ideally once those 4 lots are owned by 4 separate owners, it'd be best for them to manage their own complex. Right. Yep.
Does anyone feel make the idea to make a motion one way or the other? More discussion? Is there something else we can ask?
I don't know if we've asked, is there anyone else here that wants to speak to this issue or any other? No.
I certainly understand we don't want to make a precedence of putting properties in a PD to fix a old problem, but I think our stance has been, we denied it last time because lot 5 specifically was a problem. I think that goes to the precedence of we're not using PDs to fix old problems as a rule. If we did approve this, Brian, are there any conditions that you would require? That's kind of something that your experience, or it doesn't have to be Brian, but is there something that you would require that needs to be fixed on this, or is it?
Generally, conditions can't be placed on a rezone.
Okay.
If there was a text amendment you would want to add to the text, we could certainly discuss that, but you can't make a rezone condition on something. You can't rezone a property to like a business contingent on it being this business that goes there. You can't.
Okay. I was thinking more of like a variance where you could add something, but
It works slightly differently.
yeah, that's.
But we could amend the language of the PD to allow for like lot 1 to be used just as green space, or is that outside the scope of what can be amended?
We could amend, the language can be amended. We'd have to figure out what that does to the process, whether there's that whole rule where if it's a substantial amendment that, but if that, depending on how open to we are, maybe you're at the point where whatever it takes. So we could certainly,
That probably, for ease, you'd probably want to replat that, wouldn't you, if you're gonna keep that in an HOA outside of lot one, you'd want to replat it before we approve the PD, wouldn't you, if you're gonna keep that green space?
Wouldn't you have to make the north half of, or the north part of lot one, part of lot five then? I mean, you couldn't sell lot one as a private residence and say, oh, but your whole part of your yard here is for public use.
that would probably hurt the sale price a little bit.
It takes it from the most valuable parcel to the least valuable, but yeah.
I guess where I'm at on this, kind of stuck between emotion and common sense here. Are we creating a PD to fix a problem? Yes. But is the problem gonna be any different because of this? No. It's an existing condition. The only thing that's really changing, I mean, the density of all of this, none of that's changing. It's not like we're infringing anything more or anything less on the neighbors. The only thing that's different in all of this is ownership. You know, the units are gonna stay the same, so. And with a PD, at least we're not creating precedents. It's not like an ordinance that everybody has the same rights and access, I should say, to an ordinance. A PD is not considered the same because each PD is unique and different and has its own set of circumstances and reasons for their existence. So that makes it a little bit easier to swallow. I don't like doing this, you know, that we're basically finding a back way to fix a problem, but that was just some commentary.
I know you're really struggling with it. I understand that. I do like the aspect of, as he mentioned, the home ownership and the, maybe a young family breaking into the market with a little less expense. I do like that part of it. Is someone willing to make a motion that we can get seconded? I'd appreciate a second on a motion. And then we just take a vote and see where the chips fall.
This is Brian. I'll make a motion to recommend approval to City Council.
Totes second.
And Brian did that with a lot of heartburn, I know. I appreciate that. You might want to take him over to the VFW later. Okay.
My wife is.
Oh, okay. Well, there you could buy them both. Okay, so let's take a vote on the motion to approve the PD and recommend approval to the City Council. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, got your PD.
Recommendation was made to City Council. City Council will hear it on the 1st of July.
It's just never easy, is it? All right, so we're going to adjourn planning and zoning, and we're going to move into Board of Adjustment. So we'll call the meeting of the Board of Adjustment to order. Roll call, same folks are here. That doesn't change. Need a motion to approve the agenda, please.
Totes so moved.
Bassett, second.
Okay, all in favor of the agenda? Aye. Opposed? Okay. So now we're dealing with the variance on application for 520 North Sunday Drive. So if you just give us your names and your address, please, and then give us your story.
Yep, Casey and Lindsay Swenson, 520 North Sunday Drive.
We got handouts. Can I approach the bench?
So while things are being handed out, some background is the picture of the lots in front of you. They do not have a driveway off of either Mayberry or Sunday. Their driveway as existing comes off the alley behind the property. If you look in the zoning code, frontage is defined as a side of a lot abutting on a street. A street is defined as a public or private way that affords the principal means of access to an abutting property. An alley is defined differently. An alley is basically defined as a public or private right-of-way that affords a secondary means of access. So a street and an alley are different. A frontage, by definition, is a street. So there's no drive coming off a street. An ordinance amendment went into effect yesterday that allows a second driveway off a secondary frontage side of a multi-frontage lot. So staff's opinion is the exception doesn't really apply. They could put a driveway off a frontage, but the frontage would be Sunday or Mayberry. So we're in an interesting situation where the language doesn't necessarily account for the lot.
So our goal is to build the detached accessory garage in our backyard and then have access to it via the second driveway. Vehicular traffic would only be through the east garage door. There's two garage doors. The north garage door would just be a clear garage for decorative purposes and for more open space to the area. Our primary objective is that we're applying for the variance for the second driveway. The secondary objective would be for it to be 20 feet, which the current zone code says 40 feet. Our current driveway is 28 feet. We're applying for 20 additional feet, but that's secondary. The primary is to get the additional driveway for the use with the detached garage. This is important to us because we have a two-stall garage right now. We have kids that are getting older, and we want to be able to have some extra workspace, be able to park their vehicles inside as they get older, and just to have some additional space for our home. And some unique aspects of our situation is that we are in a unique area in Brandon where we do have the front porch to the front of our house and then the driveway to the back with the alleyway. There's only 3 alleyway streets like this in Brandon to our knowledge and research. And as we think about this, there would, with the driveway going into the alleyway, there would be no curb and gutter that would have to be done. We currently pay for the snow removal and for the street sweeping for the alleyway as it sits right now. There's no traffic concerns because the alleyway gets very little traffic. It's typically only the people who live on that street. Same for pedestrians. People who walk through are only typically the people who live on that street. This would reduce on-street parking, which we feel is beneficial for the city as well as for us, as that we want our kids to be able to park inside. And there does tend to be a lot of on-street parking already, so this would lessen that in the future. And there's no impact for fire or other type of catastrophe as we think about the potential impacts. When we look at the size of our yard, our yard is platted into one lot, but it's the size of 1.5 lots. It used to be 1.5, and we replatted it when we put a fence in a couple of years ago. And so it offers more space to build this type of detached garage appropriately while still maintaining nice visual appeal in our yard. Our yard would not be overcrowded just due to the space and how it's laid out. We've still got adequate yard space, number of trees, good flow to the property. And the detached garage would go to the back of the property toward the alleyway, not toward the front on Sunday Drive, which again would maintain the curb appeal on Sunday Drive that we currently have. The shape of our house is that it's a two-story, and it's very long and rectangular shaped. So then as a result, our yard is also very long and rectangular shaped. The shape of the garage that we're wanting to build is also long and rectangular, so there's adequate space in terms of what that would look like, and it would match the style and the sizing of our home as well. And when we looked at all of the different options, some of the things that we considered before getting to this point is that our original plan was to build a third stall onto our existing garage. But we ran into a number of roadblocks when we tried to build and put together that design. The electrical transformer box for our neighborhood is in our backyard, in between where the two driveways would be. So this has to be worked around. We also have a house that's heated and cooled with geothermal, and the geothermal wells are to the south side of our property. And currently our door to the backyard is east facing, and we are unable to move that south facing because of the mechanical room in our house and the water hookups, as well as the geothermal. So we're unable to move access from our house to the backyard with some of those mechanical types of issues that are unable to be moved in our home. So those are some of the reasons why we are unable to do the third stall garage. That was our original intention, to not have to request the variance. What we did as well is we put together some visuals of other homes in the city of Brandon that do have a second driveway, both in our neighborhood and across town, just to give a visual and more similar to what we're trying to accomplish. The home on 504 Mayberry, that's the first one. That is probably the most similar to what we're trying to accomplish. That's just down the road from us. That has the detached garage with a second driveway onto an alleyway the same way.
Patrick, I was trying to look in our ordinance. Do we have anything in our ordinance regarding alleys and driveways off of alleys?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, that's what I was finding, but I wasn't finding anything.
There's potentially a glaring hole there in the ordinance.
Well, like they said, there's not very many alleys in town, so it's kind of a unique deal. So now on the side that you're building the driveway on, is that going to be considered their rear yard, or is that a side yard because they have a double frontage?
If it's a double frontage corner lot, they would choose whether it's the side or the rear.
Okay. So if they're deciding it's a side yard, then they have less setback, but then they need to have a further setback on the south side then, right? That'd be their rear?
If it's the rear would be generally a larger setback.
Right, so they either have to be further off of the south side or further off of the east side, but it's 20 feet though, right? Because they had 15 in their drawing on page 20. They had 15 feet, and then they had 5 foot on the side setback. Those should be 7 and 20, right? Okay. Oh, so, okay.
Yeah.
So 5 and 15 is right for that? Okay.
For a detached accessory structure.
And so then is there some rule about how big that building can be? Excuse me?
1,000 square feet.
Okay. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, proposed is 960 square feet, so it's less than that.
The building itself is 28 by 32 with a 6-foot overhang, so.
You want your third, wait a minute. Okay, I'm sorry, but this is a little bit off topic. I'm sorry, but the dimensions of your proposed third stall garage are 950 square feet? Is that right? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, yep.
That's how big my house is. My house is 950 square feet.
Well.
That's okay.
Our reasoning and what, if we're gonna build a garage, anyways, we wanna build it with nice space, and so we wanna build an appropriate size, within the allowable rules and size in terms of what we're able to do.
And that's really why we did the glass garage door to the east side, so that it kind of extends the yard more than anything. Like it will be more of like a gathering space out there.
I assume this is still subordinate to the primary structure, Paul? Yes. With the existing garage, the new garage, and the square footage of the primary residence?
Yes, sir.
And it conforms to where the square footage can't be more than the amount of the house. It
Yes,
would be
ma'am.
okay on that,
Yes, ma'am.
all right.
Is there a reason why you're needing 20 feet for the driveway?
I'm pretty flexible. If that's a sticking point and we want to keep it 12 feet, I'm totally fine with that too. I can always go back and extend it out. Is that something that I can do, or is it 12 feet for that entire 20-foot section going back?
The 40 feet is measured at the property line.
Okay, so I could, within reason, jut over at some
Yeah,
point.
so
to go.
like most
Yeah.
driveways flare out at the
Yeah.
street, out in the right of way.
Yeah.
It's actually measured at typically the inside face of the sidewalk.
And absolutely, if that's our primary is to get approved on the second driveway.
I guess with the new ordinance, it allows for a second driveway on a secondary frontage side. Why wouldn't, I know it's a unique deal, so they're not, none of the main driveway isn't on a typical frontage side. That's not considered frontage. So if this isn't considered frontage, does our ordinance, how does our ordinance look at that? Is it?
I'd have to look at the language, but our discussion was about, kind of about not having two driveways on the same frontage. I mean, that's
But
what
it's
I
not
remember from
frontage.
it, but it's not.
It's not, neither one of them are, the frontage is Sunday and Mayberry. We're not on frontage. So if they're putting it on a non-frontage side, and so I don't know, I wonder if it's kind of a black hole there. We don't have verbiage to say what you can do in an alley for a driveway. We just passed an ordinance that said you can add a second driveway to a secondary frontage, and this isn't even considered frontage. So,
Yeah, our discussion there was mostly for corner lots, you could have a driveway here and a driveway here, you know? But we were thinking about lots like this.
Right.
When we decided that. Had we been, would we have included something like this? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know.
I think part of the reason why you don't want to have two is because you're blocking parking areas and things like that, but there is no parking in the alley anyway. So you don't have that. It's not a frontage. You don't have curb and gutter that you have to deal with. You don't have, I extended the width of my driveway, and I talked to the engineer at the time. It was Paul Snow, and he said you can only have it so wide, because then if it's too wide, you start pooling water and things like that. You don't have curb and gutter, so you don't have that problem. So a lot of the problems that come around from having a second driveway on a frontage road aren't there. And so if we just passed an ordinance saying that you can have a second driveway and it can be 24 feet, I'm concerned, or just wondering why, if we're saying that you can do that on a frontage, and this isn't even frontage, why we would say, why we hold them to a higher standard.
Well, yeah, one thing that occurs to me is if this would fall under our new ordinance, then why would we need a variance? We wouldn't. But if we do need a variance, then what's the hardship? So that's how I look at it.
This, to me, this would be I know we've addressed issues very similar to this on commercial properties where we've allowed, more than one access, but we still hold them to the maximum allowable total. So if they have two, whatever's allowed for one divided by the two. If we were to do something like that, if we were to go 28 and 12, that to me would be a little bit more reasonable. The hardship here would be the transformer that's sitting in the way. Instead of a 3-stall garage, they have a 1 and a 2.
So if the transformer weren't there, they could just attach it to the garage they already have.
Right.
And then all they would require would be a building
And then they
permit.
could still have 40 feet of driveway out to the property line.
Okay, I understand.
Total, yep.
Yeah, total.
So we have a specific form that we have to fill out to list what the hardship is, and so that's what they're trying to discuss right now. We have to have something to hang our hat on, so to speak, to justify it, so that in future cases, it doesn't just open up, everything. So the transformer in your mind would be the hardship.
Yeah, if that prevents them from, being able to do a 3-stall garage, because that blocks that, not every parcel has a transformer located on it.
So you would have just added on if the transformer wasn't there.
Yeah, I mean,
You can't get rid of that transformer.
you
Yeah,
can't
yeah,
really,
I know.
yeah,
I know.
no
They're
matter
not
how many
very
calls I
cooperative.
make, they're not gonna move it.
Yeah, they're not very cooperative about that, are they? Yeah.
Paul, just a question. If someone had a garden shed, because this is gonna be right across the alley from a garden shed that has a little driveway. If they had a garden shed in their backyard with a driveway to it, how do we look at that then?
We can only have one detached accessory structure.
Right, not them, but someone else in the development. If you have an alley and you have a garden shed, you can have a driveway to it, right?
Well, generally, we don't require a driveway to a garden shed because you wouldn't be driving vehicles to a lawn shed. We would require a hard surface driveway to a garage where you're going to be driving vehicles.
I guess, so it wouldn't be required, but it would still be allowed, no?
If it met the off-street regulations for a driveway in that situation, we'd have to kind of go through the dynamics of that. But it would,
I'm a little surprised that and I tried to find it too. I'm a little surprised there isn't any verbiage on alleys, but I get that we just don't have alleys. So, because there's several garden sheds that have some type of driveway to them off of those alleys, and they haven't been an issue. So,
we generally would not, I think we try to talk to the client and say, is this going to be a garage or a lawn shed? Garage, yes, driveway, lawn shed not required.
and I understand they're not required, but
Right.
still allowed.
If it meets the off-street regulations for having hard surface, there are definitely regulations for hard surfacing in the off-street regulations, so. Hopefully the homeowner did it with permission of the city regulation zonings requirements.
Yeah, and I understand that just because someone did it in the past doesn't mean that current regulations allow for it, but we don't have,
Somebody could have added a driveway or a walk-in path to a shed and didn't notify the city. That's a possibility.
things happen without permits.
Right. So, not everything in this city, or any city in America, is legal because they may not have gone through the building department. Ma'am?
Other questions for our homeowners? anyone here to address this issue? Okay.
For those of
Did-
you with
Yeah.
more experience than I have, because I'll be the first to admit that there are times when you know you kind of there's always benefits and the negative, and sometimes you miss either the negative or the benefit. But the variance that we just passed allows for a driveway on a secondary frontage. This isn't frontage. What would be the negative of allowing them the same dimensions on, you know, the same width on a second driveway there versus a second driveway on another frontage? What would be the negative?
I guess for me, just if it would some way change something we did when we discussed this before. I agree. There's a lot of things I would object to are not present here because it's not as a traditional street frontage. It's the alley, but I'm just trying to make sure. And I think just personally, I agree with the presented or discussed potential hardship of the transformer. Otherwise, they could meet setbacks and build that third stall. So that's something that anyone else with the same lot without a transformer could do, and they can't enjoy that option because of the condition of their lot, and it's not something that they created. It's something that was, it's a community transformer or whatever. So, and I also think it's, in my opinion, it's sufficiently unique that it's not something, I do think it wouldn't, I can't see where it would open up a lot, but I'm just trying to think that through.
So Patrick, letters went out to adjoining homeowners, correct?
Correct.
To, is it 300?
300 feet.
Okay.
So I don't remember how many there were, but
Did you have,
decent sized circle.
did you have any feedback from anyone?
We have not heard from anyone. Sure.
I'm Eric Lenz. I live at 512 North Sunday, so directly south and abutting where this is going to be built. I'd like to express my approval. I see no problem with this.
So when those letters go out, people get really nervous. But we feel that it's important to let the other people in the area know, and I appreciate that Eric came forward, thank you. And so it's just something that we feel is important for the community, so. All right.
There was a lot of slow traffic by the sign.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Any more questions for the folks?
Just one last question. You said you would be okay with a 12-foot?
Yeah, I'll make 12 feet work. That's just fine.
Patrick, can you tell us what the light blue line that goes horizontally through 512, what that is for? What is that? And 513, that light
Probably
blue
was
line?
a property line at some point.
Two different plats that the line goes right through their house, is that? Because they've got a light blue line through their lot too, also, I mean.
A lot of the lots up there are either double lots or there's a lot in between and they split them, and that was actually kind of Metcalf wanted stuff like that. He wanted just like, anyway, so he wanted people to have
So
large lots and
build my house on the lot line, and maybe someday my grandchildren will replat that
just a comment there. If someone were to make an improvement, they would have to replat, like the Swinstons did.
Yeah, we had to replat it when we built our fence.
The things you find out when you're making improvements, right? Okay, I will entertain a motion here, one way or the other, unless you have some more questions. You have a question, Brooks?
No, I would, I'd like to make a motion to help me remember, is this a recommendation or is this is us approving?
Nope, this is you making a
This is us
variance.
approving, yep. It's been a little while since we've had. I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance request with the condition that the, property owner meets the maximum driveway width between the two driveways, which I believe we discussed would leave a 12-foot allowance for this second driveway based on the hardship of the transformer that blocks their ability to do a third stall garage otherwise, and the unique situation about this not being a frontage.
It's Brian, I'll second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second to approve the variance with the conditions listed earlier. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. You got a garage. Thanks for working with us. We appreciate it. Thank you, staff, for trying to help them get around the transformer issue. So is that an XL? Whose transformer is it? Sioux Valley? I know somebody on that Sioux Valley board, but I don't think I have enough pull for that. So. Those utilities are hard to work with. Okay, what else do we have on the agenda? Anything?
That's it.
That's it? So can we just, I always forget, can we just adjourn this and be done, or do we have to go back?
You can just adjourn.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
This is Alyssa. I have moved to adjourn.
We got a second?
Totes second.
Okay, got a motion and a second to adjourn. Board of Adjustment, all in favor? Opposed? All right, we're done. I think everybody needs a drink.
We are done at 7:32.
32. Thanks, folks, for coming.